Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about how Trump was exposed for having another big argument with Zelenskyy. He's now pressuring Ukraine to cut off its own leg. Previously, Europe questioned China about dumping cheap goods, but now rare earth prices have shot up by 200%. Europe says China is exporting dual-use goods to Russia, so Beijing has started restricting rare earth exports. After the US changed its stance, the EU is still blindly following along, but now China is running out of patience with Europe and is no longer making special concessions for them. All they have left is Munich's Markus Söder. China holds a monopoly in the rare earth sector, and recently, China has tightened its export restrictions on rare earths, dealing a heavy blow to German industry, making it hard for them to get export permits from China. At the same time, rare earth prices are rising rapidly.
Matthias Rüth of Tradium, a major European raw materials trader, said, "The old rare earth trade is gone."
When it comes to making smartphones, wind turbines, or electric vehicles, rare earth elements are indispensable. China controls 69% of the global rare earth mining market, and the dependence is even higher in the processing stage. About 99% of rare earth processing capacity comes from China. In October this year, the Chinese government once again announced tighter restrictions on rare earth exports. Since then, our companies exported products. Even if exported products have only a small amount of Chinese rare earth materials, they still need approval from China. This move is modeled after the US, which has imposed similar restrictions on exporting chips and chip-making equipment to China. Previously, many companies could negotiate rare earth prices directly with Chinese producers. Now, German companies first ask, "Can we still get the goods?" Traders say the price structure has changed dramatically, with some rare earth materials rising by 200%. Also, to get China's export permits, companies must now disclose much more information about their customers to China. China actually learned this move from US requirements on chip companies. The spokesperson said supply is already severely restricted, so the security of raw materials for some industrial clients is now a real concern. The result will be that, one day, production lines in Germany will stop. She believes the Chinese are excellent strategists who think long-term, while European companies usually plan quarter by quarter. In contrast, China plans for 10 or even 20 years. Everything Europe faces today is the result of this strategy. Rare earths actually aren't rare, but the market is controlled by China. There are about 470 rare earth deposits worldwide, with nearly 200 of them located outside of China. That means there are still plenty of rare earth mines outside China. However, the West remains highly dependent on China because China has the largest production and reserves. This is according to the latest research from the German Raw Materials Agency. Low global market prices, lack of infrastructure and investment, and a shortage of technology and expertise have made it difficult to develop new rare earth mines. Elements like neodymium and dysprosium are crucial for high-tech products. In reality, they're not as rare as the name rare earth suggests, but the global market is still firmly in China's hands. Dr. Arsenault, co-author of the Economic and Risk Assessment Report, mentioned in this year's first quarter report. Currently, all companies involved in rare earth mining or processing are reporting economic difficulties, and even Chinese companies are no exception. It is expected that the demand for rare earths will rise in the future, driven by the needs of electric vehicles and wind power generation. However, so far there are still no signs of increased production in the market, which also explains why it is so difficult to advance projects outside of China. Tradimium's Lute is not optimistic about Germany's dependency situation. He said the opportunity to seek alternative suppliers or to establish an independent supply chain has already been missed. In May last year, German technology group Heraeus opened a rare earth plant in Bitterfeld, southwest of Berlin, to recycle rare earths from discarded electronic devices. This plant, once considered the largest rare earth magnet recycling facility in Europe, had high expectations at the start. The plant planned to produce about 600 tons of rare earth oxide powder annually, with the goal of eventually doubling output to 1,200 tons. But after just 1 year, the reality has been disappointing. Heraeus co-managing director David Christian Bendwick commented on the situation. "We can't provide any concrete figures. We're still far from reaching our production capacity. The problem lies in the competition from China. Rare earths from there are both cheap and powerful. The rare earth recycling industry in Europe simply can't compete with the supply from China. Now, Germany's dependence on China is evolving into an increasingly significant structural risk, because 4 million jobs depend on the supply of rare earths. According to the latest research from McKinsey, there are 4 million jobs in Germany that are directly or indirectly affected by the supply of rare earths. If the supply of rare earths from China is cut off, 9% of Germany's economic output would be at risk. That's equivalent to a value of 370 billion euros. To sum it up, first, when companies now complain about rare earths, it's because prices have soared. But in the past, the EU just followed the US in imposing high tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. The reason given at the time was that China was exporting a huge surplus of electric vehicles, and the prices were too low, so they wanted to stop China. Now, from the EU's perspective, shouldn't they also see China's rare earths as having excess capacity and being too cheap as well? So if China raises the price a bit, they shouldn't have any problem with it. Second, the EU is no longer just parroting the US in questioning China about exporting dual-use goods to Russia, which are then used by Russia to make weapons for the battlefield in Ukraine. And China, in order to prevent rare earth exports from being turned into weapons by Russia, the EU, or the US and used on the Ukrainian battlefield, now wants to strictly control rare earth exports. Isn't this exactly what the US and EU have been asking China to do? This story clearly shows that the West thinks it's fine for them to say and do whatever they want, but when others do the same, it's not acceptable. On another note, right now Ukraine is being bullied by the US, but does Trump really want to force Russia and Ukraine to stop fighting immediately? That's really questionable. On October 16th, US President Trump and Russian President Putin had a phone call. According to a Washington Post report on October 19th, two senior officials revealed that during the call, Putin insisted on demanding that Ukraine completely give up control over the entire Donbas region, including some small areas within Donetsk that Russia hasn't taken over yet. Putin considered this demand as one of the conditions for ending the conflict. And Trump and Putin hope to have that meeting in Anchorage, Alaska. The Washington Post quoted sources close to the matter, saying that at the time, Trump told Ukrainian and European leaders that Putin had asked him for Ukraine to give up the entire Donbas region, that is, Luhansk and Donetsk, as well as other Ukrainian territories controlled by Russian forces. In exchange, Putin was ready to promise to end the conflict. According to two senior officials, nowadays, compared to the conditions Putin put forward at the Anchorage summit in August, this time, in the phone call with Trump, Putin's territorial demands were slightly less. Putin was willing to give up parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson in southern Ukraine that Russia controlled, in exchange for full control over the entire Donbas region. One official said that some White House officials even saw this as progress in the talks, but another senior European official believed that Zelenskyy was unlikely to accept Putin's demand, saying it was like asking him to sell one of your own legs just to get some air. The conflict has dragged on for more than 3.5 years, and the situation is at a stalemate.
The Russia-Ukraine conflict over 3 years is stalled, with Russia holding 20% of Ukraine's territory, 99.7% of Luhansk, 79% of Donetsk, 74% of Zaporizhia, 76% of Kherson.
Russian presidential aide Ushakov said that the phone call between the Russian and US leaders on April 10th, it was Russia who took the initiative to propose the call, which lasted 2.5 hours. Ushakov said that Trump repeatedly emphasized the need to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict as soon as possible, while Putin reiterated that providing Ukraine with tactical missiles would not change the situation on the battlefield, but would cause significant harm to Russia-US relations and the prospects for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. Ushakov also said that during this call, Trump suggested meeting with Putin again in Budapest, Hungary, and Putin immediately expressed his support. The day after finishing his call with Putin, on October 17th, Trump met with President Orban at the White House, and after meeting with the driver as well, Trump told reporters while flying to a rally in West Palm Beach, Florida, "I believe the Russia-Ukraine conflict should end immediately, and the current front line should be the dividing line, no matter where the front line is now. Otherwise, the situation will get too complicated and you'll never be able to resolve it. You have to stop at the current front line." The meeting in the US on October 17th seemed calm and uneventful on the surface, but behind the scenes, there was a lot going on. According to a Financial Times report on October 19th, during a heated meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy, Trump urged Zelenskyy to accept the ceasefire terms proposed by Russia. Trump told Zelenskyy that Putin had explained to him that this conflict was a special military operation, not a war, and added that Zelenskyy must reach an agreement, or else he would be facing destruction. Trump bluntly told Zelenskyy that he was losing in this conflict, and warned him that if Putin wanted to, he could destroy him at any moment during the talks. At one point, Trump even tossed aside the battlefield map of Ukraine, saying he was tired of looking at the Ukrainian frontline maps over and over again. He said, "This red line, I don't even know where that is. I've never been there." Trump also believed that Russia's economy was performing well, which is consistent with his recent public statements that Putin should. This stands in stark contrast to official statements that Russia's economy is about to collapse. Reports say Trump repeatedly used foul language when analyzing Zelenskyy, and he kept bringing up the points Putin mentioned to him during their call the day before. Financial circles believe that although Trump later stated he supported a ceasefire along the current front lines without demanding Ukraine give up more territory in Donbass, this intense meeting further highlighted Trump's unpredictable stance on the conflict, and that he's willing to support Putin's position. The ongoing drama between the US, Russia, and Ukraine can be summed up like this: even Zelenskyy is just a pawn for Trump to play with. As for who leaked the inside story of Trump's negotiations with Zelenskyy, it looks to me like it came straight from the White House, just to show how tough Trump is, and to make it seem like he really wants Ukraine to accept the ceasefire terms. Second, Putin really does want a ceasefire. The war has dragged on so long that the Russian economy is starting to feel the strain, and a local ceasefire plan is actually acceptable to Putin. He wants more land in the Donbass region, but I believe that's just him asking for a high price. There's room for negotiation. Third, I have some doubts. Does Trump actually not want a ceasefire? The US is the one who truly holds the key to ending the war. After all, they've always been the ones supplying Ukraine with weapons and intelligence support. Wow, even if you want to keep fighting, there's nothing you can do. But if I really agree to a ceasefire and let Putin off the hook, Putin, the guy who helped Trump in the 2016 election, wouldn't he start making all sorts of demands from Trump? For example, organizing some kind of US-Russia cross-sea bridge trip to let Putin show off. Just thinking about it might already annoy Trump. So maybe it's better to keep Russia tied up with the Ukraine war. After all, the US can sell more weapons that way. And if Europe keeps getting messed up by Russia and left half crippled, why wouldn't Trump be happy about that?